Yeshua, your King of praise. Shalom, everyone. This is Messianic Rabbi Buzz Tremé, the Jew teaching you. Welcome to our Bible study. Yeshua, you are the way. Yeshua. So we're finding out today, because of the Messianic Awareness movement, that the Gentiles are heirs together with Israel. They're getting it. They're starting to buy shofars, and they're starting to study their own Jewish roots and realize that mostly, or a lot of what they're about, comes from the view of the Romans, who lied about the people of God and said they had replaced, Roman Empire replaced Israel as the church. Remember, the word church is kahal, and that's what God called Israel. The Greek word is ecclesia. That's what he called Israel. It's translated into church in English. So this isn't about the Gentiles and God dealing with them, and then he'd try to figure out something to do with the Jews. It's all about dealing with the Jews and his promises he made concerning them. Gentiles are a byproduct of it. And Paul says in Romans 11:11, you were given the gospel to make Israel envious, to provoke them. And then one day they're going to look at the Gentiles and go, they've got our Messiah. And Paul says the veil will be lifted, and life, it'll be like life from the dead. So understanding this gets you away from this simple thing where people are always saying, well, if you be good and love Jesus and repent and whatever they're telling, then you'll go to heaven when you die and live forever. Why don't you just lie about God? Because that's surely not what God says. What did he say? The meek will inherit what? And when he told the Abraham and his son, Yitzhak, Isaac, Yaakov, told them to walk the land from north to south, east to west. Everywhere you put your foot, I swear by my own name to give you this as an eternal possession. And then the Catholic Romans, who formed their own Catholic church, said, no. That's all out now. They blew it. We're taking over. And God's chosen us to replace them, called replacement theology. The Reformation in the 1500s did not deal with this problem, but joined this. They just wanted to reform this evil church, and the reform included killing the Jews as the Catholic Church had. Martin Luther, John Calvin said, burn them in their synagogues, burn them with their children, destroy their works, and let the earth be freed from them. And today people, you hear them, oh, I'm a Calvinist, you know. Why don't you say I'm a Satanist? I know John Calvin did some good, and so did Martin Luther, and I've been there where he did his work. I speak German. It's just like, man, look, you need to be careful when you ally with somebody if they're off. Can you imagine standing before the Lord and say, I preached to try to influence people to kill the Jewish people. But they didn't receive you, Lord. And you are grafted in. You weren't even looking for me, but my love was expressed to you. But if you talk about those that I cut off, Paul says, how much greater will he cut you off? So understanding this, who wants to live a life and then find out that what you put your faith in didn't work? I'm not saying you won't be saved, because that's between God and you. Everybody got that? Okay. What time is it? Or how much time do I have?
Almost 6.
Okay, good. Everybody cool? Anybody got questions about this? Okay, we're moving right along. No, do you really?
Yes.
Yes.
Did they go through the curtain? Did they go through the veil? That was what I wanted to know.
Who did?
High priest.
Were you talking about in the figure? I think I know what you're saying. she asked if in the ritual, if they went behind the veil, I think. Okay, here's how the temple was set up. And by the way, the tabernacle was the early portable form of temple. Later, Solomon built the first temple to God, and then the Babylonians tore it down, and Nehemiah and Zerubbabel, they came, and Zerubbabel was in charge of rebuilding the temple, the second one, okay? Yeshua came to it, and it had actually been deconstructed and reconstructed in a greater form by King Herod. Okay, all this is history. Now, so the first tabernacle had the same articles of furniture as the temple, except for there was only one menorah, one lampstand with the 7 spirits of God depicting the Messiah, Isaiah 11, 1 and 2. The Messiah would have the 7 spirits of God. That's the Elohim, okay? Then when they built the temple had 10 menorahs. Everything else was basically the same. It might have been enlarged in size, but you suddenly move from 1 menorah to 10. And 10 is the number of human government, human ruling. 10 fingers, 10 toes, most of us. And so man was destined to rule, and so we moved from just Israel having their light. The light is going to transfer to the nations. And that's what that depicts at the Temple of Solomon. So we always think of it as one curtain in the temple that separated the holy place from the holy of holy place. The Ark of the Covenant was in the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest went once a year in there. Back out, there's a veil, a big, thick, over 6 inches thick, embroidered veil. I think it was 60 feet long. Big, huge, heavy thing. They had to use cranes. They had to use so many oxen to pull the ropes that hoisted the curtain up. Big, heavy dude. This is the one that got torn when Yeshua died on the cross and the earth shook. God said, "Into this thing." Okay. So the veil was actually 2 veils with a pathway between it. The high priest would take the blood of the sacrificed animal. First, he had to sacrifice a bull. Remember, the bull is the symbol of God, the first letter of the Aleph Bet, of the alphabet. So the high priest would sacrifice this bull to God and take the blood. And look, there were treatments for the blood. It was in a container, a bowl, that you couldn't sit down. It had like a point on the bottom, a cone, so that no priest who was ever dealing with this blood as it was being gathered and prepared while the people watched, and priests were making sure everything's done exactly according to what God had said. They couldn't ever sit that blood down on a table while they're working something. What would happen if they did? The blood would die. It would coagulate. And if coagulate, it loses it's no longer animated, it's no longer movable. You follow that? So it had to be fresh and alive. Water that is moving was called living water. Water that is still is called dead water, it is stagnant. So the blood had to be the same way. So he'd take that blood in there and sprinkle it on the curtain and on the sides of the Ark of the Covenant. He did this for himself. Okay, a type of Christ who offered himself. This high priest, Aaron's lineage, they just had to do the ritual. They weren't qualified to be the true high priest. And so then he would go and sacrifice a goat, a ram, called an ayil, a male mature leader of the goats. Take him, sacrifice him for the people, and this had to be brought in there. So he went through on I think it was on the there was a doorway on one side of the temple in the curtain where he would actually enter with the blood. Transverse or traverse across between the two curtains, it was a pathway for the man to walk. And it was built that way so the priest could do it. It's kind of a zigzag. And he got to the end, and there was a door on this side. And I actually can't remember whether it was this way. You know, the door was over there first. But bottom line is, he then went through the last veil. So the veil was pierced here because there was a doorway provided. And then he brought the blood into the Holy of Holies. The only light in this place was the presence of God. Supernatural illumination. If you go back now out of here into the holy place, what was the light in that room? Menorah. And in the temple, there were 10 of them. Wow, that's a lot of light, huh? God was showing something. So when Yeshua went in and, you know, his ministry, he actually gave himself, instead of sacrificing a bull or a goat, a boat. Instead of doing that, he offered himself. For, you know, the priest had to offer the bull. He went in as the bull. The bull is the symbol of the first letter of the Aleph Bet, the number 1. The Aleph is the number 1. It's the A, and the alpha male. So he, in every way, had to show that he was representing God. He's the strength of strengths. So he brought his own blood. Then for the people, his own blood was offered as well. Remember the scapegoat? One goat was sent off into the wilderness, and the other one had the hands laid on him. The sins of the world were put on this guy. And he was led over here to be sacrificed, and this blood was taken in to atone for the nation of Israel. Important to note, it was for Israel. Okay? They are the recipients of this redemption of God. So Yeshua does all of this, and once he goes to the Father and brings it, he then comes back and gets the guys out of Sheol like he promised, and like Paul says he did, he led captivity captive, because he had gone to prepare a place for mankind. And he prepared a place, so they brought them there, and then he came back and ministered on earth for 40 days. And then he ascended while they watched. As he ascended, remember the angel said he's coming back the same way, but you guys need to go and wait for the promise he's told you about. Old Testament foretold it, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, about the outpouring of the Spirit. So they go to the upper room and wait, and 10 days, which is now the day of Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, the day fully comes. And what happened? He poured out the Holy Spirit. Who got saved on Shavuot, or as we say, Pentecost? Who got saved there? Jews. 120, it says. No Gentiles. What happened right after that? 3,000 Jews were born again. What happened next? 5,000 Jews were saved. So the Jews are now in Jerusalem with their own kind, celebrating and walking in the Spirit and finding out what God requires by the Spirit. And they're learning, I don't have to go offer any cows or goats or bulls or whatever. I don't have to, because Yeshua accomplished it all himself. That was all figurative. He's the fulfillment of the law.